Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law 30A and 20, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Select Board will be conducted via remote participation. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the open session of the portion of the meeting may do so by viewing Dalton Community TV on channel 1301 or via Zoom. Let's see, at us02web.zoom.us J817054793886. No in-person attendance of meetings of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure the public can adequately access the open session portion of the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post the town's website an audio and video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of the proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Okay, I'd like to call this meeting of the Select Board to order, please, and all those who are able, please stand for the pledge. Hey, Joe, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I'm sorry. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, Brittany, would you please do the roll call?
Yes. Town Manager Ken Walto.
Here.
We have Robert Bishop.
Here.
Edward Hollow.
Here.
John Boyle.
Present.
Joe Diver.
Here.
And Mark Stroh is absent or excused.
Yeah, he'll be on shortly.
Okay.
Okay. This is the time when the public will address the board on any item listed on the meeting agenda or any issue or matter of the town. If you intend on addressing the board at this time, we ask you to do the following. Use the Zoom link or dial 684-6111 extension 28. Please identify yourself by name, address, or the company/institution you represent. The public address to the board segment will last no longer than 30 minutes. Please make your comments concise and try not to repeat statements made by others. Please address your comments to the board chair. Discussion or debate on any issue may not take place at this time. Questions on procedural matters may be answered by the chair or the designee. Please be cordial and respectful of others. If anyone wishes to be recognized when an agenda item is discussed by the board, please request this at this time. This request may be granted by the board chair. Address comments to the board chair and be concise. Now, is there anyone that would like to speak to anything?
Would you like me to address my stuff around the parks now, or would you like me to wait till it comes up on the agenda?
It's coming right up and next, Dustin.
Okay, then I'll wait for that. Thank you.
Okay, so then we'll move to item 5. We'll open as the Parks Commission in consideration of reopening the park plan. Jane, I guess Jane's with us, I hope.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, and Dustin, all right, who would like to start?
It doesn't matter to me. Why don't I give the framework of what happened or where we're at,
please,
and then Dustin can go. Okay, so as you know, the Parks Commission / Select Board had voted, I think in March, to close down all of the town's parks. And so now that, we're past the peak and are slowly reopening Massachusetts, it was suggested at the last Select Board meeting that a process be put in place to start reopening the parks so that people would really know what that looks like and that the town could do whatever it needs to do to safely, open the park. So a group of us, it was kind of a subgroup of the Emergency Management Committee got together. So present was Dan, and I don't know how to say everyone's last name, so I'll just say Dan from Emergency Management. We had John from DPW, Becky Flick, myself, Pat. We had the building inspector, and I believe the police, the acting chief police was also there, and we kind of talked about what reopening the parks would look like, and it was all based off of the standards that have been set forth by the state for park use. So things that were all really, go ahead. Okay. So things like social distancing, face covering, cleaning, sanitization, and that sort of things were discussed. And so I don't know, did the select board receive the memo that the group sent out regarding what our kind of our conclusions were?
Yes.
Okay. And so basically what it says is, we think that we should reopen things like the fields, the tennis courts, the pavilions, and the playground equipment. And the things that the exceptions to that were things like, when we replace the swings, only do every other swing to help, kind of keep the kids to have social distancing. And the two things I think that the board of particular interest tonight, and something that I really think that the board should weigh in on, really has to do with the two baseball parks. What is it, Chamberlain Field, and what's the other one?
Pine Grove, yes.
Pine Grove Park, yeah. And so those both have pavilion areas as well as bathrooms. And so what I think that the board will be talking about tonight is, the consensus of the group, so primarily Pat from building and John from DPW, was that the town really didn't have the capacity to properly maintain the bathrooms. And so they were recommending that they stay closed, and they also, there was a recommendation that the actual concession areas also stay closed as an area that's controlled by the town. So that's kind of what's on the agenda, kind of what I think that we'll be talking about tonight. I'm hoping that there's representatives from both the Senior League and the Little League, which I now know are two separate entities, and hopefully we can have that discussion. So that's kind of my verbal report on that. Is there any questions? Okay.
Okay, Dustin, what do you want to propose?
Sure. So just a couple things. I want to start by just saying I acknowledge how challenging the times are right now. And I do applaud the whole town, employees, select board, for how you've helped us navigate through this as we begin what's going to be a very tough road ahead. That being said, I'm kind of here representing Little League as a CRA Director of Recreation, all the sports programs in town. So although the Little League is a separate organization, the CRA does sit on their board, and Mike Hagmeyer has asked me tonight to represent Little League in kind of what we are concerned about in terms of what's on the memo, and hoping we have a discussion about making some changes or tweaks. I just want to share with everybody that through this entire process, since day one, we have not taken any step without keeping the select board through Ken aware of what we're doing and what we're thinking. The CRA has really worked hard. We've been closed, our doors have been closed for 11 weeks. And during that time, a small staff have been doing things like we've made 200 calls a week to our senior citizens in the community, food drives, we're holding essential daycare for working families here. We're working with the school district to provide virtual tutoring for kids in the district. And the point to that is we stayed connected. And our members are communicating with us, and we feel like we really have a good sense of what's going on and what they want. And a lot of them are asking us to help them get out, get moving safely. And that's really what I want to address today, is that just in 4 days of gathering interest through registration, we've had over 75 kids registered for sports here and over 65 kids for Little League. So we're up around 140 kids. So people are ready to do this safely. And I think Little League and the CRA have done a great job putting out our policies for reopening. And you can find those on the CRA website in terms of what we're going to do. We shared those with Ken. I think, Bob, you saw a copy as well.
Yeah.
So with that being said, just really what I want to do on this memo that came out with the reopening, I just really want to focus on the part that says facilities to be closed or modified. That's where my concerns really are. So the first is the basketball courts. I'm just looking for really more of a clarification. So according to the state, the way I understand it for reopening, they are saying that sports such as basketball and other sports can be played provided there's no contact, no shared equipment. That's somewhat challenging, but not impossible with basketball, right? I do understand the concern would be how do we monitor that, and I get that. But in phase 3 of the governor's reopening process, it does talk about the fact that we can start to have pickup games and do those things. So I would just ask the select board to consider putting in there that when we get to phase 3, that the basketball courts could be reopened. So I'd ask for that consideration. So that's in line with what the state's recommending. The second thing on there about the concession stands, I want to be clear about something. We have no intention, there's not one sports program in the entire town has any intention of selling food or opening a concession stand this summer. Nobody. We've canceled any tournaments we've had. It's all the stuff we're doing for our community. There's no concession stands. However, those buildings are critical to us being able to reopen our program safely. We're going to use those buildings to store our sanitation products that we've purchased, to keep an inventory of equipment. In order to run these leagues, we have to jump through a lot of hoops and provide an awful lot of equipment to keep people safe because we're not going to be sharing equipment. In order to keep it organized and sanitized, we were going to use those buildings to keep it away from just the general public going in and out. On top of that, it also would provide us a way to have a third, if needed, washing station at the park, because both the one at Pine Grove and Chamberlain has running water, which I'll get to now with the bathrooms. And that, to me, as Jane mentioned, is really, really critical piece. So you notice on this memo on the first page, it talks about users should sanitize their hands, wash their hands with soap and water as soon as possible after using the equipment. Yeah, we would, in essence, as a town, not be giving them any place to do that by not opening the bathrooms. So if we're opening all this equipment and then we're not opening the bathrooms, I see that as an issue in terms of safely reopening the parks. I understand the concerns around manpower and supplies. I assume that that's what they're referring to when they talk about limited capacity to adequately maintain these facilities. Mike Hagmeyer from Little League has already volunteered. Little League would purchase all the products, and they would have parents volunteer to sanitize if the town wishes to clean the bathrooms. We could do a similar thing at Pine Grove Park. I understand everybody has a lot on their plate, but at the same time, if we're going to be opening parks, encouraging people to do this safely, I feel responsible as somebody who runs those programs to have those bathrooms open to be able to wash their hands and to sanitize when they feel it's necessary. And again, I'll mention those concession stands at both the baseball field at Chamberlain and Pine Grove have running water. So in the case of an emergency or we needed a third washing station, they would be available. Not available if we are not allowing those buildings to be open. And then the obvious is that, in the past, we haven't always opened the bathrooms. At Pine Grove Park, there's been years we had issues with vandalism, and John Ruffley, who's always fantastic and easy to work with us, came and they decided to close the bathrooms a couple of years ago. We put porta potties out. That was a reasonable solution then. I don't think that's a reasonable solution now, given the situation we're in. I don't think that meets what we need to be able to do to have those kind of programs there. So I come from the sports angle, but also the camps angle as we start to open summer camp, utilizing the park. It will be we'll need to be able to access running water so kids can wash their hands and whatnot. So kind of come from all angles of the CRAs. So those are kind of my three big things. I just hope the select board will consider those. I'm maybe making a little bit of some tweaks to those.
Okay, Jane, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, I would like to first say that, I haven't been in town for very long, but I will say that, it's evident that CRA has really been proactive, and I feel like we've worked together quite a bit, and I appreciate their proactiveness. I feel like they're looking at this from all the different angles. And so it's, I'm curious, is John Ruffley or Pat on the call tonight?
I'm here, yes. Pat.
Okay, so
I'm here, Jane.
okay, so I'm going to let them speak to the actual concerns that they have. And, you know, as far as the public health perspective, you know, if there was adequately, it's better, washing your hands is always going to be better than sanitizing your hands. But if it's not being maintained properly or it becomes an issue, that's kind of, I think that there are some concerns that way. But of course, it would be better for everyone to be able to wash their hands. But and the reason why we kind of came up as a group was just listening to, well, I'll let John and Pat talk about their feelings about the bathroom and the concession. I really don't have an opinion about the concession, so that's what I have to say. And I'd like to invite John and Pat to talk.
Okay, John, do you want to respond?
You want me to go first, John, or?
Go ahead, Pat. Go ahead, Pat.
So there was as I was going through and reading everything, this came up during our discussion on Monday for reopening everything, and I had gone through the governor's executive orders, and it said that he was going to be updating the orders for reopening time went on. So I have the new order from June 9th that was put out. So I don't know if everybody has that new order that was put out by the governor. Yes. So basically, if you go to Hygiene Protocols, what it says in there on page 6 of it, it comes right out, and it's talking about inside must-have washrooms. Then it goes into basically the outside ones, and it says participants and coaches must achieve proper hand hygiene at the beginning and at the end of all activities, either hand washing with soap and water or by using an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. And it goes on saying setting up a hand sanitizing station. So it doesn't say anything about having to have the restrooms open, because that is a very difficult thing to keep clean, especially those restrooms. There's no ventilation. There's nothing like that. That's why we suggested porta potties, because porta potties have ventilation. They come with hand sanitizer, and you can set up sanitizer on the outside of any one of the buildings. So when it came to also to the concessions, the worry was on the concession that's out at Chamberlain Park. Besides that just being for food, I was told they want to use it for storage, but the storage could be used in the grandstand that's out in back of the ball field, which is on the ball field, which makes it easier to have the equipment instead of traveling back and forth. Leave equipment right there and setting something up in the grandstand that's on the ball field. And like I had mentioned before about us running into vandalism and how the keys have been, quite a few keys have been given out to numerous people and the doors have been left open. John called me up, I think it was Tuesday, asked me if I could run out there, meet him out there and open up the bathrooms that he had already turned on the water. And then he had mentioned to me how the concession door was open. So once again, here we are talking about the concession being left open. I mentioned in the last meeting, or the bathrooms being left open. Now the concession door is unlocked where anybody could go in and out. So that's why we want to lock down these buildings for safety, so that there's no damages. And then the other thing is, with me trying to ensure that the buildings are falling under the OSHA and state guidelines that we have to fall under, when I was in there at the beginning of the week, somebody had already pushed the grill in front of the electrical panel, which you cannot have. Then I go in there today to take a look at everything, how everything's moving along. Everything in concession, I don't know why. All the racks, everything was shoved into one corner in front of the electrical panel, which cannot happen. These are things that I have to keep looking at, and this takes away from my time from keeping the town hall clean, all the other places clean. So these are the things why we want to close everything down, for safety, not having to worry about anything down the road. And on top of that, I mentioned 2 weeks ago to Mike if he could clean the concession, because it hadn't been cleaned or anything picked up since last baseball season. And I've gone in there,
and it's still really bad with food on the shelves. The slush puppy machine still filled with slush puppy mix from last year. Things like that. This is, we've asked for it to be cleaned, and it has not been cleaned, even asking. So that's why we feel it is more safe to keep these places locked down. And if you have people going into, like you're saying about having a hand washing station, so now you have a small room with a bunch of people going in to wash up. That's part of where he's also saying in here not to have a common area. All common areas are to be closed down permanently as well for the season. So you're almost making that like a common area where you're having everybody go in to wash. So that's, I'm just reading everything off the new governor's executive order from June 9th. So that's what I have to say.
Hey, John?
Can you hear me?
John Ruffley, you have anything to say?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, hang on. Does anyone want to comment to that? I'm just having some technical difficulties. I'm trying to get signed back in on the computer. I'm on the phone right now. So if someone else wants to respond to that, and I'll be back with you in a second here.
Okay. Board members, any feelings on bathrooms?
Yeah, it sounds like a challenging issue, but certainly, I can, as I mentioned, I think in my email the other day, is that we're going to have a lot of parents, a lot of grandparents watching these kids play baseball and having an adequate place to, use the restroom or sanitize their hands, etc. We need to figure out some sort of solution for this for the summer for both fields. Whether it's the restrooms being opened or whether it's I'll even call it a high quality porta potty, if you will, handicap accessible, would also be an idea. Paul, what I heard there in the June 9th update, and I have to defer to Board of Health, is what are the OSHA, what are those requirements of the ventilation? If there are requirements that we can't meet, even if we open it, we need to really consider that. But we need to figure out a plan. It can't be nothing. I think that our the issues that are addressed about not cleaning up the concession stand area since last season, I think we can raise those and have that conversation with Mike and the leadership of Little League, and knowing those guys, the great programs that they run. And Dustin, I think they'll be able to resolve those matters. So I have to defer to Dustin on responding to those issues. But I'm in full support of figuring something out here.
I'm in figuring out something that would work. But I am really surprised to hear that the restrooms, the permanent restrooms, don't have good ventilation. Don't have apparently ventilation. That does not sound good at all. Have people go in there and then it not be vented well before the next person goes in there.
If I can comment on two things that you guys have said, Pat again. One is it has an exhaust fan, but it doesn't have any air that can come in. Unlike a porta potty, where porta potties are vented so the air can come in and out.
You have to have air coming in. I mean, it's not going to work unless you have air coming in. If you're venting it out, you have to have air coming in.
Yeah, I mean, all the bathrooms have an exhaust fan, just like you would have home, but unless you have a window, you have no air coming in. There's nothing coming in right now. And the other comment I wanted to make is where you had mentioned having grandparents and parents and everything else out there. As of phase 2 for opening up for them starting practice and stuff, it's stated right in here that they're only supposed to have one chaperone with the child on site. That's all they want to have. That's according to the June 9th for phase 2. I don't know phase 3. There's nothing been put out there for phase 3. So there's only supposed to be one parent, one grandparent, one guardian per child out on the field, or the spectator there for right now.
This is Jane. answer the questions on what the requirements are, and I'm in Maine, so I'm kind of shooting off the hip here. I think that the requirement is, I know that it needs to be cleaned regularly, and it's not in between every use or anything like that, and it needs to be sanitized. I would say if it was going to be sanitized, I would think it needs to be sanitized before it gets locked up every time. Even though I think that the requirement for outdoor bathrooms is a little bit more lenient than that. But I think that what's missing is any sort of, I think that we need to determine, how we're going to approach it as far as, are we going to ask, for instance, the Little League or the CRA, if they want to use the bathroom, how are we going to make sure that it's limited access? So it sounds like there might be a key, widely spread out keys. The other thing is with the CRA, it sounds like they're willing to buy, that they're willing to put together some sort of cleaning protocol and sanitizing protocol, but just kind of, what would that look like? And really for the board is that something like that, something that would work, that the board would like to work towards, but then even more than that, especially I think with like DPW, is that something that they're comfortable with? So.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Jane. This is Joe. I think it's a great point that if we have, Mark shared with me that he talked to Mike that they were talking about having parent volunteers, and Dustin mentioned that tonight. I think that's perfect. If we can have a reasonable approach to it and the supplies that are available, et cetera, I would support that. And then I think the using the buildings for storage of equipment would also be fine. But I think we also need to address the concerns there from the team members in the town to making sure they meet the we meet standards at OSHA, et cetera, and things aren't piled up to electrical supply and things of that nature, because that could cause a fire and we have other issues. But I think that's just conversation that the protocols can be put in place and actions taken to support that. That's just my few comments there.
How about if we do this also, if we have Dustin put together a plan for maintaining these bathrooms and present them to Pat and Jane and John, and get their approval, and then I would say I wouldn't have any problem using the restrooms. But it has to have a strict schedule, it has to have some organization, and it has to have some follow-up. And I mean, we can't have Pat's like, he's going to be like Stretch Armstrong. I mean, he's all over the place trying to maintain stuff. He's not going to have time to take care of the parks. So it's going to fall heavily on the leagues. So I guess that's my 2 cents.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, if we can turn to Dustin and just get his comments on the conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, so just a couple of points of clarification. So I just want to be clear that the concession stand area at Little League Field may not look as organized as it typically does now, because if I'm not mistaken, they were told that by tomorrow they had to have it completely emptied as the locks were being changed. So there's a little bit of a scramble there to empty that out. And so maybe when you went in there today, they're in the midst of doing that. I can reiterate to them about the electrical panels. I was in there 2 weeks ago and it wasn't an issue. I also checked everything. The only thing I can speak to is a slush pumping machine. I can check that. But everything else I checked and certainly looked relatively picked up. There was boxes and things in there that are for this year's season. Just to bear in mind, there's a lot of preparation that goes into preparing for a season. So we were preparing for spring sports in February, well before this all happened. So then we all had to stop in March. Mike Hagmeyer had to put that stuff somewhere. So that is stuff that you see. In terms of the vandalism and in the keys, the Little League coaches, there are 5 Little League teams. Each manager, head coach, has a key to the facilities. At Pine Grove, there are 4 senior baseball teams. Each head coach has a key. That's probably far fewer than the number of keys that CRA staff and town employees and everybody else has. But they certainly do. I mean, they do have key. I don't know that, the vandalism was some youth coach leaving doors open. And I can't dispute who it was, but I'm not going to point the finger at anybody. That being said, the only other thing I would like to mention is in regards to the concession area and the announcement and using the grandstand behind the backstop at the Little League field. It's just not a viable option. What we're going to do is limit one person to the booth to announce the games. But that means people are going to be going in and out of it. We're looking for a secure location to store this stuff. The concession stand would be off limits because there won't be a concession stand. We'll strictly be a storage unit. So really, I don't know what the option will be if we don't have use of that building for storage. It won't be the grandstand behind. I don't know what it will be, but it won't be that. So, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, may I ask a question, Mr. Chairman? I was just wondering, I'd like to ask Dustin about the use of porta potties and why they don't think that would be adequate.
Well, there's a number of reasons, honestly. Number one, the main reason is there's no running water to wash hands. We just feel like you're talking about putting sanitizers outside the porta potties, and we have, according to this, we have vandalism issues. So how long are they going to last before somebody does something to those? And secondly, I'm picturing, I don't know about you guys, I'm not really a big fan of using a porta potty in the summer in July and August. I just don't know. I'm thinking of, I know, and Pat's right, in phase 2, it's one chaperone, but we're not talking about, we're thinking ahead to phase 3, where we can start having games, and now you might have, and we're still limiting the number of people that can come. That's in our reopening plan. But still, you have grandparents that are legal guardians of kids. You got, the little girl softball leagues. I just don't see a way to do this without having the bathrooms open. So that's my issue with porta potties. Really, it's mainly the running water and just really, just in general, normal times. They're pretty tough.
Thank you.
Jane, what are other towns doing? What are you seeing as plans and programs? Because if we have, what I don't want to end up doing is limited because of our capacity and staff, and if we have volunteers stepping up from Little League to help support the reopening process for our community children. But if we were to set a protocol and use the restrooms, use the building for equipment, Little League and CRA take the lead responsibility, making sure those protocols are followed. Town management make sure that there's, lack of a better word, compliance in that protocol, and then we continue moving forward. I see a lot of businesses in town that do have restrooms open and do have things open. They have cleaning protocols, they have processes in play, and it's kind of funny. I find it interesting. You go to one town, restrooms are open at Cumbies. You go to another town, they're not open. So it's like, what is the standard? Because I would love to make sure that our kids have a good experience, and those that are able to go and watch the protocol have a good experience, and we support these great programs in town, but also understand the capacity of staff and the concerns. What do you think?
Well, so the interesting thing about the guidance that comes out is one, it comes out really late, and things change pretty quickly. But the other interesting part about it is because everything is so decentralized in Massachusetts, so we have 351 towns, and some of these boards, that have Little League programs, for instance, are really small. It's a volunteer board, and so what the state has done, instead of giving the burden of Boards of Health to approve every single protocol. This is what it is they give guidance on something. The business, whether now when I say business, I'm talking about municipal buildings, whether it is a Cumbies, whether it is a retail store, or whether it's Little League, they just need to take the guidance that's been issued for their specific activity, and they need to attest that they are complying with it, right? And then the thing that the state is saying is that once there's a complaint, then the Board of Health comes in and looks at their policies. This is a little different because it does have to do with town property. So to answer your question of what other towns are doing, I'm not aware of that many towns that, Dalton is a small town in the world scale, but in the Berkshire County scale, you guys are actually one of the bigger towns. And so, like for instance, Great Barrington, who is a similar sized town, I'm not aware that they have, if they even have bathrooms at their like Little League facilities. That's just a decision that they have made. And so there's no uniform application of anything. And so what is left is that the burden is on the actual organization to meet the standards as much as they can. And because the town has control over these bathrooms, it kind of overlaps. So I know that didn't entirely answer your question, but most other situations have a bit of a less hands-off approach from the town because that's the way the state set it up.
Okay, thank you.
If I could make one more comment into Dustin, because he wasn't at the last meeting that I had made. Am I able to do that?
Yes.
Okay. So, last meeting I had mentioned about restrooms being open because people are open them. For an instance I gave last year, Dustin, 4th of July, I know on the day before the 4th of July, the bathrooms were locked up over at Chamberlain. I checked everything, made sure everything was good. And then right after the 4th of July holiday, I came back. Something had happened down in that playground, whether somebody threw a party or something, but somebody opened up one of the restroom doors. So the reason why I'm saying I believe there's numerous keys out there is because these doors have been left open numerous times when there hasn't been baseball. Because I even called and spoke to Mike, and I think we did it by email, so I probably still have that email. And he said no, there was no baseball that weekend because I asked him to try to find out the reason why the door was open. So my concern is, with these doors being open, is safety for the kids as well, because we don't know who's going into these restrooms. You never know if it's somebody that's sick or not, and then somebody comes up and goes into the restroom, and now it's town property, and somebody gets sick because the restroom was left open. So that's really been my biggest concern with these restrooms and opening up concession, because people going in, doors being left open, we don't know who's been in there. Last year I know it wasn't baseball, but somebody opened the door for somebody down there. So that's really been my biggest concern with that, for the safety of the kids not getting sick. That's why I'm mentioning porta potties. And I know what you're saying about summertime with porta potties, but I have two sons, and them growing up playing baseball and football and everything else. Most of the towns, especially the ones I was in with my boys, we used porta potties. It wasn't really that big of a deal, but I'm just also looking at ventilation, because there's no ventilation in these bathrooms, but porta potties do have it with the air flowing in and out of them. So that's been my biggest concern with that. That's what I mentioned at the last meeting. And like I said, with the doors being open, anything can happen. So, and that's it from me.
Michael, sorry, go ahead, Justin.
Go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead.
I guess my opinion on this real quick is, it sounds to me like the board is pretty unanimous on wanting these open. So, I guess we just need to look at it from the standpoint of, if the board wants them, agrees to keep them open, the next step is maybe what Bob said. They'll have to come up with a plan, and I guess from there it would be who's going to keep track of you know, if this is really happening. If they're doing what they're supposed to do, then you know, then we just continue. So my feeling right now is, just because I can see the way this is going, let's get to the next step and figure out who's going to be in charge after they come with a plan to open and keep them clean. I guess that's all I have to say.
I think that's spot on, John. Well said. And one of the things that's in my mind is, you know, working in a health system, we have, you know, signage that our CEO signed off to. His signature is there to represent that we are safe when you come back into the environment. So I see something kind of like a collaborative sign-off by the president of the Little League, because the Little League and the CRA, you're all communicating to parents about how you're going to keep the kids safe in these activities. And then we as a town also co-sign that to say, you know, we're supportive of this, but we're also holding everybody accountable to make sure the protocols are followed. So it's a collaborative effort to move that ball forward.
If this does go forward and there's problems, then we go to option B, would be the porta potty.
Yeah. Dustin, you think that's a fair approach?
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I would say is, I believe, and I could be wrong, Pat, you could correct me, the locks on the bathrooms at Chamberlain have already been changed, correct?
Just on the bathrooms, because the water is still shut off in the bathroom. I didn't want somebody going in there and using them. There's no water in them, right? Just turn the water out in the other.
My point more was, yeah, okay, my point is that now those keys that people have no longer work, correct?
No, I still have the lock. So if in the last meeting, the board had said close them, so I did. So now I can just locks back. That's not a big deal.
Well, the reason I'm bringing that up is we could start back from scratch with a new lock, a new key, right? And we could limit who has the key, and we could designate somebody from each league that's responsible for opening and locking the bathroom.
Yes, I'll have to change those out. Those are key-only deadbolts. So
got you. That was my question. Okay.
I can put new locks on. That's not a problem.
Well, maybe we should start with new keys. But I do like the idea of coming up with a plan, and I'd be happy to work with Mike Hagmeyer and make sure we have one that we can all agree to, and John and Pat.
Okay, yeah, keep Jane in the loop too, because
And Jane, yeah. Yep.
Everybody in agreement on that?
Yeah, and that also includes the equipment storage plan as well, in the concession stand.
Right, and you gotta make sure there's nothing in front of the electrical panels and stuff, because that is important.
Play ball.
Okay, is anybody else got any comments on this before we move on?
The only thing that I don't feel has been addressed is the basketball. And the justification for the basketball really was just, it's just such a physical game. And so that's why we had talked about that, because it is a contact sport. And there's a lot of pickup games. I mean, I think that those are just going to be really, we can't be fleecing kids at the park, you know? And so it was just going to be a lot simpler to have those closed off. I just think that the board just needs to make a decision, you know, do they want to have those basketball hoops blocked off so people can't use them, or do we just want to put up guidelines and just let them be as they may? So that's the only other thing that I feel like the board has not addressed.
I'm very hesitant on the basketball hoops, because you watch the games over there, it looks more like a rugby match than a basketball game half the time. So I'm in favor of keeping them closed to phase 3.
Did you say until phase 3?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Which should be the 29th, correct?
It can be as early as the 29th. And, you know, honestly, I think that the state just opened up testing yesterday and today to any person who attended a mass gathering. I think that they're waiting to hear back to see if there was any spike in cases based on, like, people not social distancing. But otherwise, the state's numbers look really good. So there is a chance that that might happen as early as the 29th.
Unless anybody disagrees or whatever. I mean, I'm open for suggestions. It's just my opinion.
No, I think that's fair for now, and then we'll just kind of monitor it as we move forward.
I have not seen anybody playing basketball anywhere.
Yeah. I think the other issue is just the playground area as well. I'm not sure if that's a different agenda item or the same agenda item.
Yeah, they're going to remove every other swing, I do believe, and they're going to put up a sign saying it hasn't been sanitized, use at your own risk. Really a good idea.
So that would be playground to be open when?
As soon as my thought is as soon as the board makes a decision on it and the town can get the the signage in place. So that's what I was thinking. The other issues like.
Oh, go ahead, Jane. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I'm sorry. The pavilion is the other thing that we need to let the CRA know. Because they are the ones that do the scheduling for the pavilion. So again, get the signage out there, get the guidelines to the CRA to give to people who are renting out those pavilion areas, just so that we're on the same page. Because right now the parks are closed, but people are jumping over, and there's really no, it's I wouldn't call it anarchy, right? But like I think it's better to have guidelines in place and have people be able to use the facilities legally than to have them, have to break the rules, and because then they're not really apt to follow some of the social distancing measures. So.
Yeah, I would. I'm not sure if we need a motion or a vote here, but I would would open up the parks and just put up the signage. Parents are responsible for the kids, and the guys and let folks do what they do. So.
Yeah, I mean, I strongly suggest they should bring wipes and stuff if they want their kids to use playground equipment. They can wipe it down.
Yeah.
When they use it.
Somebody has a great dog out there.
Mine's outside, thank God. Do we need a motion? I mean, we can vote. I have no problem voting on it. Or
My personal opinion is because you guys had a motion to close the park. My personal opinion is that it would be good to have a motion to reopen them so that the staff, we can move forward with confidence.
Okay. Motion. Go ahead, Joe.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we move forward with opening the parks with appropriate signage as guided by our Board of Health, and highly recommend to parents that they supervise their children and follow those guidelines.
Okay,
I'll second that motion.
okay, a motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. John Boyle.
Yes.
Edward.
Yes.
Joe.
Yes.
Is Mark back on yet?
Not yet.
Okay. Bob, yes. Okay. Is there anything else for playgrounds or CRA or anything?
Just say one more thing quick.
Sure.
I know someone started asking when can that happen, and I can open the gates tomorrow, but I can't guarantee any swings will be hung probably until early next week, just because of staffing.
That'd be fine, John. You gotta do the best you can. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you. You're welcome. Take care.
Okay. Next item, item 6, Shared Streets and Space Grant Program.
Okay.
Ken and John, would you like to speak to that,
Yeah,
please?
John and I had a discussion about this yesterday, and we intended to bring this for the board on the 13th of July, but I went on and looked at the MMA website yesterday after our discussion and saw that there is only $5 million for this program statewide, and that the application period opens on Monday. So I thought that we should probably try to get an application in there as soon as we can. What we, of course, aren't able to do is to bring you a recommended program of projects. So John and I did discuss some ideas yesterday, and one of them was, of course, sidewalks. We always need money for sidewalks, and that's eligible under this program. There seems to be a pretty simple application process, although some GPS coordinate information is needed and so forth. The other project I thought of was the project to install the pedestrian flashers, because we're going to have to do those intersection improvements at Depot Street in particular, and we already have some engineering plans done, so that could be one of the other things that we look at. And other than that, I'll open it up for your comments and suggestions.
Honestly, Ken, I think the two projects you just mentioned would be fantastic.
A little more to that, I was reading up on that grant the other day, and there's really nice sections in there, and their intent is to help us with a COVID recovery almost. So there's sidewalk programs to allow for outdoor seating. There are a combination of safe bike walking trails and a safe way for children to get to school. There's other opportunities to have a walking path or things of that nature. So I don't think that it's going to support traffic lights or sidewalk construction unless it's really directly connected to one of those 4 or 5 projects and shows the value in that. The other thing that, just to throw it out there, is that we have that big green area down by the senior center. What if we were to leverage this grant to have outdoor seating, outdoor eating areas for our restaurants? We can then use like a tent area or whatnot. I don't know. But I think John and Ken really look into that connection of those categories when you're submitting those projects. But I found that as a key element of scoring that the Mass DOT is going to do under the Shared Streets program. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, and if you have any ideas, send John an email.
Absolutely, John, go for it.
I have to disagree with my colleague Joe. I think the application pretty much stands out with the word sidewalks in it. And I want to talk about a specific issue on Depot Street between Centennial and Chamberlain. That's right in front of the park. The sidewalk has deteriorated for several years. We've had multiple complaints from the park people about that condition. And it's also on the Appalachian Trail. That's the first thing that they talk about, they see when they walk along Depot Street. And it really needs to be repaired. It's not that long. It's 150 feet. John roughly would know better than I. But I think that's imperative. And I've mentioned this to Dan Filio, who I believe is in the process of filling out the application.
Good point, John. Okay. Yeah, there are a lot of sidewalks around. I'm sure John knows a lot of them. So.
Yeah, the categories here for proposed projects in this grant include shared streets and spaces, supporting increased rates of walking and/or biking by increasing safety and enabling social distancing, outdoor dining and commerce, better buses, and then safe routes to school. So the proposed project should advance one or more of those following goals in that grant. So Ken and John, good luck.
Thank you.
If I could say something real quick.
Go for it, gentlemen.
After I read it more, I do kind of agree with Joe on how it specifies. It's kind of more for this whole COVID thing. I do believe that possibly we could get the pedestrian crossing lights in under this project because it is a school route.
Yeah.
I think at this point, because of it's time sensitive, that particular project could almost be shovel ready. I mean, we're already in the process of looking at it, and we've had the state out there. So that's just my opinion. I mean, I can talk to the state engineer and see if he can give us more insight on if we can do random sidewalks throughout town or whatnot. But I think as far as shovel ready and timing goes, that right now the town, the pedestrian lights would be the way to go.
Remember, we're making accessibility improvements there as well, so that's an advantage.
Yeah, they need to be in there, that's for sure.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask John a question?
Absolutely.
John Ruffley, a non-related question. Are we making any progress towards getting Gulf Road open?
I think it can be open in 10 minutes. Basically, I think we were waiting, the board was gonna wait and see what the complaint situation was, and if anyone, if I recall, I thought that's what we were gonna wait and see if there were a lot of complaints and a lot of requests to have it open.
Well, if I may say this, a week, 10 days ago, the day after the meeting, I explained to the chairman the reason why it's imperative to have Gulf Road open. I won't go into a long story, but the reason that you have Gulf Road open as early as you can and as late as you can in the fall is because if there's an accident at the intersection of Housatonic Street and Main Street, then the Gulf Road is the only way out of town. I know it sounds weird, but it's true. And it's happened twice in recent years. Now, I was under the impression that the chairman was going to ask you to open Gulf Road, and that was 10 days ago.
I did send an email, John. I did send an email to both Ken and John asking for it to be open. Okay?
Yeah.
We did?
Can we just agree to get it open?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it.
Does anybody disagree?
We'll open.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anything else on shared spaces? John, one quick question for you, John Ruffley. When are we going to start paving roads?
Monday they're going to start milling. They've been working out there this week, removing structures. They'll start milling Monday and putting leveler down by the end of the week. So the roads will be done probably about two weeks. They'll be paved totally.
Okay, where are we starting?
They're starting up off of Pleasant Street this week, and Monday they'll be milling, and I think they're going to work their way right down south. So they're just going to, once they bring all their equipment into town, they're just going to keep going.
All right, great. Thank you. All right, anything else? Okay. That leads to the announcement. The town hall is now open during usual hours from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Wednesday, and 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Thursday. Masks must be worn and social distancing observed. The Dalton Library is now available for pickup 9 to 5, Monday, Tuesday, Thursdays, 12 to 8 on Wednesdays, and 8 to 4 on Fridays. Library users may begin placing requests immediately by emailing dalton@cwmars.org. Telephone requests will also be accepted. Call 684-6112. Due to the current COVID pandemic and the new law signed by Governor Baker, Chapter 45 of the Acts of 2020, and the Town of Dalton Selectboard voted to postpone the annual town meeting from May 4th, 2020 to June 22nd, 2020 at 7 p.m. at the Neskis Regional Middle School in the gymnasium. And the annual town election from May 11th, 2020 to June 29th, 2020 from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Dalton Community House. Masks must be worn and social distancing observed. We are urging voters in the interest of social distancing to request an application for early voting ballot by mail or absentee voting by mail, so that these ballots can be mailed to the registered voter. If you would like an application for early voting ballot or an absentee ballot application mailed to you, or if you have any questions or concerns, please contact the town's clerk's office at 413-684-6111, extension 14 or 15. I declare an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we go into executive session in accordance with General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A, 2 and 3, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel the police chief and to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining Dalton Patrol Officers Union and not return to open session.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, a motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Joe Diver.
Yes.
Edward.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Bob, yes. We'll take a 5-minute and launch on the other website, okay? Thank
Yep.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you.